Sir, you're charged with interference with the duties of a public servant. You're facing up to 6 months in jail and or a $2,000 fine. We are going to do probable cause. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can or will be used against you, sir.
Yes, sir.
On March 28, 2025, an officer was in the process of serving a capital murder warrant on a suspect in Harris County, Texas. While conducting a felony stop, the defendant, who was identified by his Texas ID card, pulled up on the officer's perimeter, got out of their motor vehicle, and began walking to the residence where the murder suspect was. The officer's supervisor ordered the defendant to stop and stay right there. The defendant refused and continued to ignore officers while walking towards the residence. The officer's supervisor ordered the defendant to step back multiple times and then grabbed the defendant and took him to the ground.
Him?
Yes, Your Honor.
Was he the capital murder suspect?
No, Your Honor.
I live there.
Stop.
Oh, sorry.
I believe that they were in the process of serving a warrant on someone else at the residence, and that's when they came in contact with the defendant. Ordered him to stop. He refused to stop going towards the residence, Your Honor.
Did it serve the warrant? What ended up happening?
Looks like after refusing commands, there was a brief struggle where he was detained.
Was the murder suspect there?
I'm not sure, Your Honor. It does not say. I have no further facts that show if the warrant was service was complete on the warrant or not, Your Honor, or completed at the time. I just believe they were in the process and believed him to be at the residence, and that's when this incident occurred.
Read it again. If you don't mind.
Yes, Your Honor. On March 28, 2025, the law enforcement officer and Squad 5 of the Houston Police Department's Gang Division served a capital murder warrant for a suspect observed inside a truck at a nearby residence. While conducting a felony stop, the defendant, who is identified by his Texas ID card, pulled up on the perimeter, got out of the vehicle, walked to the sidewalk, and began walking to the residence where the murder suspect was. The supervisor then ordered the defendant to stop and to stay right there. The defendant refused and continued ignoring officers and walking towards the residence. The supervisor ordered him to step back multiple times, but the defendant was once again ignored the officers. The law enforcement officer grabbed the defendant and made him off balance and took him to the ground.
Okay, so now, but when you first started, you said they were going to a capital murder suspect in a car.
Yes, Your Honor. That's what. So I was originally reading the summary, and I'm going straight from the gems down, Your Honor. It looks like the suspect was observed inside a truck at a nearby residence.
So the suspect is not even in the residence. No.
Then they later state that the suspect, that the defendant here was walking towards the residence where the murder suspect was. I'm not sure, Your Honor. I have nothing for that.
I find no probable cause in your case. Just be careful, man. When you get into a pissing match with
I understand.
who's going to win?
They are. I understand.
No.
Yes, sir.
This case is a textbook example of how confusion, miscommunication, authority collide in high-risk police operations, and how a courtroom becomes the only place where that collision finally slows down enough to be examined. Asterisk from the very first words. The charge sounds serious. Interference with the duties of a public servant, punishable by up to 6 months in jail or a $2,000 fine. On paper, it reads like a straightforward obstruction case. But as the judge begins peeling back the layers, what emerges is not a clean narrative of guilt, but a fog of uncertainty that ultimately collapses the state's position. The incident stems from a capital murder warrant operation conducted by Houston Police Department Gang Division in Harris County. This is already the highest possible enforcement context. Capital murder warrants are volatile, dangerous, and emotionally charged. Officers are trained to lock down perimeters, limit movement, and treat any unknown person as a potential threat. That context matters, but context alone does not replace legal clarity. Asterisk. According to the state's own summary, Officers were conducting a felony stop on a suspect believed to be associated with a capital murder. At some point, the defendant arrived at the perimeter, exited his vehicle, and began walking toward a residence. Officers ordered him to stop. He did not. They ordered him again, continued walking. Eventually, physical force was used and he was detained. That's the version that sounds strong until the judge starts asking questions. The first crack appears when the judge asks the most basic clarification. Was this man the capital murder suspect? The answer is no. He lived there. He was not named in the warrant. He was not identified as the suspect. He was not fleeing. He was not armed. He was not interfering with an arrest in progress. Because as it turns out, there may not have been an arrest in progress at that location at all. Asterisk. Then comes the second crack, and it's fatal. The prosecution's own narrative shifts might explanation. First, the suspect is described as being inside a truck at a nearby residence. Then the summary states the defendant was walking toward the residence where the murder suspect was. Two statements cannot both be true, at least not without additional facts. And those facts never come. The judge catches it immediately. If the murder suspect was in a truck nearby, not inside the residence, then what exactly was the defendant interfering with? A perimeter pops, possibly a felony stop, maybe. But the state never establishes that the stop was occurring at that exact residence, or that the defendant's movement actually threatened officer safety in a legally articulable way. Asterisk. This is where probable cause collapses. Probable cause is not about vibes. It's not about what could have gone wrong. It is about specific, articulable facts that show a crime was committed. The judge repeatedly gives the prosecution chances to clarify, to reconcile the contradictions, to establish the operational timeline. Each time, the answer is uncertainty. I'm not sure. I have no further facts. I don't know if the warrant was completed. In a capital case environment, uncertainty is dangerous, but in court, it is deadly. To the prosecution, asterisk, the judge's ruling is calm but firm. I find no probable cause. That's not a technical dismissal. That's a foundational failure. Without probable cause, the charge cannot stand. The case doesn't move forward. There is nothing to bind. Over. It ends right there. Asterisk. And then comes the realist. Not his law, but his wisdom. Asterisk. The judge doesn't lecture. He doesn't scold. He gives a warning. Just be careful, man. When you get into a pissing match with, you understand who's going to win. They are. That line matters because it cuts. Both ways. On the street, police control the scene. They issue commands. They escalate force. They decide who gets detained. In that moment, compliance, if you believe your rights, often determines whether you go home or go to jail. But in court, power flips. In court, officers don't get the benefit of assumptions. They need precision. They need consistency. They need facts that line up from start to finish. Here, they didn't have them. Risk. This wasn't a ruling that said, the officers acted maliciously. It wasn't a declaration that the defendant behaved perfectly. It was a reminder that hierarchic policing does not erase constitutional standards. Even during a capital murder operation, the government must clearly articulate why a specific person was lawfully detained. The defendant learned a lesson about street reality. State learned a lesson about courtroom reality. Asterisk, and the judge did what judges are supposed to. Do not pick sides, not protect egos, but enforce the boundary between authority and legality. Asterisk, cases like this don't go viral because of shouting or drama. They matter because they show how easily power can overreach when clarity is missing, and how quietly but decisively the law can shut that down when the facts don't hold up. Asterisk, in the end, no jail, no fine, no conviction. Asterisk, just a warning, a dismissal, and a reminder that probable cause is not optional, no matter how serious the original investigation may be.